Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, whenever you're watching this. My name's Hannah, and my paper that I'm going to present is called Identity, India, and the HALLYU Wave. So, without wasting any time, I only have 10 minutes. I'm gonna dive right into what I'm gonna be talking about today. Firstly, what is the HALLYU Wave? Now, especially people of the younger generation would have heard this term thrown around in the contemporary zeitgeist more often than not. But what it is the export of South Korean soft power in the form of cultural products and entertainment. Now, maybe you wouldn't have heard of the HALLYU Wave, but if I mention acts like Blackpink and BTS, your kids will probably know who they are. Next, I'm going to move on to the sub-themes. The first sub-theme is where I'm going to be tracing the global rise and contextualizing the ascent of the HALLYU Wave within its history and the background of South Korea as a nation. Because it is important to understand that it was a very deliberate movement on the part of the South Korean government as well as the actors within the Ministry of Culture and Tourism, so that the industry has reached the heights that it has today. The second theme and main theme, as seen in the title, is about the theme of identity. So now under identity, I'm going to be talking about HALLYU and gender, HALLYU and Northeast India, and HALLYU and physical identity. So now we have the sub-themes, let's dive right to it. So firstly, the global history and rise of the HALLYU Wave. Now you can see on the screen different headlines. K-pop sensations, BTS set concert live stream record. Blackpink becomes YouTube's most subscribed female pop artist. K-pop album sales at a record high despite pandemic. K-pop group Blackpink breaks a YouTube record for biggest video premiere. And now you can see a picture of K-pop group BTS who are speaking at the UN. Now you may think, how did this happen? How are musical artists from this country, where no one even speaks English, which is generally recognized as a language that connects the different countries in the world, how are they becoming so famous? Well, there is a reason behind that, and we will go to it. And before I mean, a lot of people first brush with K-pop and the HALLYU Wave, even though you may not have realized it, was this guy. Oppan Gangnam Style. Sorry for a little dance break, but that was Psy and that was Gangnam Style, a K-pop song which has broken records everywhere and was actually the reason that YouTube had to reset its entire view counter to include views that reached over 1 billion. So now, when we go into the global history and rise, you can see that the South Korean government was actually a very proactive player in HALLYU's rise to the top. So if you look at the South Korean budget now, there is a portion of their budget specifically dedicated to promoting their soft power outside their country. The second one is the South Korean historical context. So this is a country that had been occupied by Japan, and there were struggles with their national identity, especially because the Japanese deliberately engaged in a process of cultural erasure, where the Korean people had to take on Japanese names. Korean cultural symbols were defaced and torn down, and even after occupation was lifted, the Korean people themselves had to work really hard to find who they were and find their national culture, as it were. And then there came the Korean War, which is another devastating event that had happened in that country. So you can see that there was a big need for rebranding their country as a whole, and that is where the South Korean government came into play, and they established the Ministry for Culture and Tourism, and they began to actively promote performances, and they began to take their K-pop groups outside the country to promote their activities there, and just made all sorts of efforts to break into the universal cultural scene. So I talked earlier about the government funding, and then what happened was Internet 2.0 came, and user-generated content, not the University Grants Commission, I'm sorry, user-generated content is basically when YouTube came about, and that meant that the audience for Korean entertainment and Korean products didn't have to be limited to only South Korea. It could go outside as well. And that is when it saw a huge boost in their popularity and movement. So when you talk about the rise in India, you see that there was a princess called Princess Ho Hwang-ok, and she was rumored to be a Korean princess who lived in Ayodhya. So you can see that ties between India and South Korea existed long, long ago. But then after that is when Manipur saw the rise of an outfit called the People's Liberation Army, and they actually banned all sorts of Indian entertainment within that state. And now what happened was there was a vacuum that needed to be filled, and Korean dramas took over that vacuum. And even more than a decade after this ban has been lifted, you can see that Korean dramas and Korean entertainment has not really left Manipur and has actually spread to the rest of Northeast India, which I will be talking about later in this presentation. Not to mention that India's look east policy in terms of their foreign policy has also opened up their borders and received a lot of cultural products from the countries that are neighboring India as well. And that could be another reason why you could see a rise in Indian engagement with the Hallyu wave. Now we move on to the themes of Hallyu and identity, and the first theme is Hallyu and gender. So the person you can see on your screen right now is Amber. She identifies as female, but she's very famous for her androgynous looks. And Korean gendered ideas are solidly based on their faith of Confucianism. And what Confucianism generally preaches is the idea of a submissive female and very traditional ideas of gender roles. And you can see that very clearly, especially in the Korean dramas of the earlier period. You can talk about iconic Korean drama Boys Over Flowers, you can talk about Cinderella and the Four Knights, and really anything till about 2015 is when it slowly started to evolve, is where the female, even though they have agency in the beginning, as soon as they meet a guy, their independence slowly starts going away and they're made to seem all the more attractive for it. So, as I said, submissive female characters. Romantic violence. Now, this is an extremely problematic trope that you can see a lot in Korean dramas, is where there is a situation where there's no consent in the scene at all, and the male character does a bunch of wrist grabs and hugs from the back and other forms of violence that are actually disguised to look as if they were romantic, and there's romantic music playing in the background, and that's supposed to be appealing in some way. And I'm sad to say I myself did not see the problem with that until much later than I should have, which is something else that is problematic about the ideas of gender that are being propagated by the Hallyu wave. Now, there's a lot of body shaming that happens as well. I can point out two specific Korean dramas, Oh My Venus and Dream High, where Oh My Venus is actually centered around a girl losing weight because she wants to be more desirable in front of society. And even in Dream High, there's a guy who tells the girl saying, I would date you if you lost this weight. And if you really think about the ideas that are spreading to people who consume this, because now we've established that it's not only South Koreans who consume these products, these cultural products, right? So if you really think about that, there are some deep identity issues that it propagates as well. And as I said about Amber before, K-pop idol images are androgynous versus infantile or hypersexualized. Now, the male groups are encouraged to have a more androgynous image of themselves, project, wear makeup, and, you know, be generally more fluid and ambiguous with their appearance. On the other hand, the female idols are encouraged to either project a hypersexualized version of themselves or be all infantile, and there's actually this word called aegyo, is where they pretend to be like babies and act all cute. And these are grown women, these are like 30-year-old women who are doing this and encouraged to do this as a part of them being an idol. So that is really something to think about. Now, this idol is actually identifies as male, but you can see the obvious use of makeup, which is really frowned upon outside South Korea, especially in traditional societies like Indian societies. I also want to talk about gendered audiences. So in the survey that I conducted, I received 227 responses, and out of that, 92% of the respondents were female. They identified as female versus 7% who identified as male. Now, if you look at this vast dichotomy between the respondents, you can really imagine what kind of a negative atmosphere and connotation is created around males who consume this kind of traditionally feminine media. Now, when I interviewed some of these respondents, they specifically mentioned the word gay in relation to K-pop and Korean dramas, and they say that they don't watch it, and even if males do watch it, their peers make fun of them, saying that K-pop is gay. And there are two conclusions that can be drawn from that. The first one is that a male even daring to like something that a majority of females like is calling into question his own sexuality. And that, I think, is something that is not only symbolic in Indian culture, but it's a macro phenomenon. And the second thing that we can realize from this is that something that the idea that males are afraid to engage with this content because they will be seen as gay also shows that they are so afraid of being seen as gay, that being called gay or being called feminine is so beneath them that they wouldn't even want to try experiencing something new. And that, I think, is extremely problematic and is indicative of the deep-rooted misogyny that is present in our culture. So now we move on to the next theme. And I have 3 minutes left. Okay. HALLYU and Northeast India. So now you can see a picture of a K-pop concert that actually happened in Northeast India. I already mentioned about Manipur, so now let me talk about cultural proximity theory. Cultural proximity theory propounds that two cultures would have an easier time of relating with one another when they have similar elements that they can bond over. For example, in the Northeast, there is a similarity in terms of physical appearance. There's a similarity in terms of naming traditions, of dressing styles, in terms of food, in terms of respect towards elders, and especially because of the problem of representation of the Northeast within mainstream Indian culture, you can see that the Northeast entertainment scene is not really represented in Bollywood, especially, as you can see from, for example, Mary Kom, where Mary Kom herself is from the Northeast, but the actress who was chosen to play her was Priyanka Chopra, who's clearly not from there and possesses very little physical similarity towards the actual person. So when it comes to terms of representation, and when I did my interviews, I received answers saying that they felt that they were able to relate more to Korean culture than their own culture within their own country as well. So you can see this struggle of the Indian versus South Korean identity that you can see in Northeast India. And when I conducted my survey, it showed that the maximum number of respondents who had the largest sustained exposure to HALLYU came from Northeast India as well, which means that they said they had been exposed to HALLYU, some form of HALLYU, whether it was the food, beauty, movies, music, or dramas, from the time that they could remember, or from a very young age, for example, from age 5 years old. And you can see how that side of India was exposed to the HALLYU wave much before the rest of India caught on to the bandwagon. Now, HALLYU and physical identity. We've come almost to the end, my friends. Let's hang on. HALLYU and physical identity. Now, the K-pop industry is actually South Korea in general, is infamous for setting unrealistic body expectations. And when you look at they want double eyelids, they prefer V-shaped faces, slim bodies, and especially when you were an entertainment figure in that industry, you were expected to conform to that sort of image and ideal that is set for you. And when you think of all the people who are consuming this perfected version, now I'm aware that this is not a unique problem to only the South Korean industry, but if I give you examples of how the extremes to which it can go, I can talk about K-pop diets. Now this person, this really beautiful person that you see on screen, her name is IDENTI. She is a solo artist and she is extremely hardworking. She's been in the spotlight from the time she was 15 years old, and she has talked about the extreme diets that she has been put on right before her performances or for her concerts, which happen at least, and her tours, which happened very frequently throughout the year. And her diet included just a couple of fruits and a protein shake for the whole day for a sustained period of time, which is definitely an unhealthy example to set for all the young girls who aspire to be like her and who aspire to reach her position. And plastic surgeries. Now in South Korea, it has one of the highest rates of plastic surgeries in the world. There are legends of people being gifted plastic surgeries when they turn 16. And when I say plastic surgeries, I don't talk about very major ones like enhancement of certain areas. I'm talking about a double eyelid surgery, or to make your face a little more V-shaped, or to take the fat off, like liposuction. So now you can see in these pictures how different these are both K-pop stars, and they used to look very different before they got plastic surgery. Now, the lady you can see in this picture, her name is Guhara, and all the struggles that I mentioned before, all the pressures that are there before them, she had to face a lot of them being a K-pop star as well, and unfortunately she passed away recently, and that was the latest in a spew of K-pop stars committing suicide. There was Jonghyun, there was Sully, and that really called into question the toxic atmosphere that has been propagated by the Korean music industry, even as it scales larger and larger in size as it takes on the world. So what is the conclusion? You can see all the different identities that come into play when you talk about the Hallyu wave, and you can see the reason why it has become as big as it has become. Now, when you come to a summary, you talk about how we as consumers of media must decide whether this affects us and whether this affects the people that we are in relation to as well. And just keeping that in mind, just what kind of ideals do you want to set as examples for the ones that you love and the ones that other people love as well. So that's all I want to say for today. Thank you for listening. That was Hannah.